just before sunrise. An FBI tactical team quietly surrounded a small apartment building in Raleigh, North Carolina. Their target wasn't a drug trafficker. He wasn't a spy. He wasn't a terrorist. And he wasn't carrying a single weapon. Yet federal investigators believe this man had embarrassed some of the biggest technology companies in America and disappeared every single time they got close. For nearly 3 years, he had become a ghost. Every failed investigation, every dead end, every company that suddenly discovered its secrets had been stolen, somehow led back to the same person, but no one could find him. Until this morning, when agents finally forced open the apartment door, they didn't find a criminal mastermind surrounded by expensive computers. They found a quiet man, sitting in an ordinary apartment. No dramatic escape, no shootout, no resistance. Just one of the most wanted hackers in America, calmly accepting that the chase was finally over. But here's the question that made this case legendary. How did one man stay ahead of the FBI for almost 3 years without writing the world's most advanced malware? Years before the FBI surrounded that apartment, America's biggest technology companies were facing a problem they couldn't explain. Sensitive software, confidential source code, internal systems were somehow being accessed by someone who wasn't supposed to be there. At first, each company assumed it was an isolated incident, a mistake, a careless employee, a technical glitch. But then, it happened again and again. Different companies, different cities, the same invisible intruder, one after another. Some of the most powerful technology companies in the world were quietly discovering that someone had slipped through their defenses without breaking down the front door. The strange part wasn't what investigators found. It was what they didn't find. There were no destructive computer viruses, no systems crashing, no digital chaos. Instead, someone simply walked in, took what they wanted, and disappeared, almost as if they already had permission. That made investigators ask an uncomfortable question. If nobody was forcing their way inside, then who was opening the door? As federal investigators dug deeper, they slowly realized something even more disturbing. These attacks weren't random. The same methods, the same confidence, the same fingerprints kept appearing. Somewhere, there was one person, quietly moving from company to company, collecting secrets, while leaving almost nothing behind. The FBI gave everything they had to finding him, but every lead ended the same way. Too late. He had already vanished. At this point, investigators believed they were hunting one of the most technically gifted hackers alive. They couldn't have been more wrong, because the weapon that made him so dangerous wasn't hidden inside a computer. It wasn't a virus. It wasn't sophisticated software. In fact, it was something almost everyone uses every single day. A telephone. A telephone. It sounds almost ridiculous today. When most people imagine a hacker, they picture someone typing thousands of lines of code, breaking through firewalls, or unleashing dangerous computer viruses. But the man the FBI was chasing rarely needed any of that, because he had discovered something much simpler. Computers don't make security decisions. People do. It usually started the same way. A phone would ring inside a large technology company. An employee would answer. On the other end was someone who sounded calm, professional, helpful. He already knew the employee's name, their department, sometimes even their manager. "Hi, this is Kevin from Network Support. We're fixing a problem with the phone system. I just need to verify your login information." Nothing about the conversation sounded suspicious. There were no threats, no urgency, no obvious scam, just another employee trying to help another employee. Within minutes, passwords were handed over, internal phone numbers, access codes, security credentials. Not because they were stolen, but because they were given away willingly. Before anyone realized what had happened, He was already inside. That's what made this case so different. He wasn't attacking computers first. He was attacking trust. Every firewall, every security system, every expensive piece of software depended on one assumption: that employees could recognize a lie. He proved they couldn't. Company after company began discovering that confidential software had disappeared. Motorola, Nokia, Sun Microsystems, Digital Equipment Corporation. Some lost proprietary source code. Others lost internal systems they believed were untouchable. And no matter where investigators looked, the story felt strangely familiar. Someone always remembered. There was a phone call. By now, federal investigators finally had a name: Kevin Mitnick. To the media, he was becoming one of America's most notorious hackers. To the FBI, he was a fugitive. But to people inside the hacking community, he was becoming something else: a legend. Kevin wasn't breaking into banks to become rich. He wasn't trying to destroy companies. What fascinated him was the challenge. Could he convince someone to trust him? Could he enter places everyone believed were secure? Every successful intrusion only made him bolder. And every victory made investigators more frustrated. Because every time they got close, Kevin was already somewhere else. Different city, different apartment, different phone, different identity. It became a nationwide game of cat and mouse. Except the mouse always seemed to know where the cat was. For more than 2 years, the FBI couldn't catch him. Every lead disappeared. Every trail went cold. Every mistake belonged to the investigators. Until one night, Kevin made one of his own. He chose the wrong target. Not a corporation, not a phone company, another hacker. By 1992, Kevin Mitnick wasn't just America's most elusive hacker. He was now a federal fugitive. After violating the terms of his probation from an earlier computer crime conviction, he vanished. And with every passing month, finding him became more difficult. Not because Kevin was invisible, but because he understood one thing better than almost anyone else. Technology could be traced. People could be manipulated. Kevin rarely stayed in one place for long. Apartments were temporary. Phone numbers changed constantly. Identities came and went. Even the cellular phones he carried weren't really his. At the time, mobile phone networks were far less secure than they are today. Kevin exploited weaknesses in those systems to clone cellular phones, allowing him to communicate without making it easy for investigators to trace him. Every time authorities thought they had found him, the signal disappeared. It was like chasing someone through a maze, while they could see your every move. Meanwhile, the list of victims continued to grow. Technology companies tightened security. Employees were warned about suspicious phone calls. Internal investigations multiplied. Yet somehow, Kevin kept getting in. Inside FBI offices, investigators pinned photographs, phone records, computer logs, and witness statements across walls. Every new clue promised a breakthrough. Every breakthrough led to another dead end. Kevin wasn't faster because he had better computers. He was faster because he understood how investigators thought. He anticipated their next move before they made it. Then, something changed. It wasn't an FBI operation. It wasn't a surveillance program. It wasn't a lucky witness. It started with one decision that Kevin would later regret. Among the people Kevin admired, there was one name that stood above many others: Tsutomu Shimomura, a respected computer security researcher, brilliant, methodical, and deeply trusted within the cybersecurity community. Hacking his system wasn't about money. It was about proving a point. If Kevin could break into his computer, then nobody was untouchable. So he did it. He entered Shimomura's systems, copied files, and quietly disappeared. It looked like just another successful intrusion. But this time, Kevin had chosen the wrong target. Unlike previous victims, Shimomura wasn't waiting for law enforcement to solve the case. He started investigating immediately. Every network connection, every phone signal, every digital breadcrumb became part of a puzzle. While the FBI had been chasing a ghost, another hacker had begun hunting him. For the first time in years, Kevin wasn't the only person tracking someone. Now, someone was tracking him. Cliffhanger. As Shimomura followed the trail across cellular networks, one location kept appearing: Raleigh, North Carolina. The hunt was finally coming to an end, but after nearly 3 years of failures, nobody wanted to celebrate too early because Kevin Mitnick had escaped and he could disappear again. By early 1995, the trail had grown impossible to ignore. Phone records, cellular signals, network activity. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same city: Raleigh, North Carolina. Investigators had been wrong before, more than once. Kevin had slipped away, leaving them chasing empty apartments and disconnected phone lines. This time, they weren't taking any chances. The raid, February 15th, 1995, just before dawn. FBI agents quietly surrounded an apartment complex in Raleigh. No flashing lights, no dramatic announcement, no helicopters, just silence. They moved toward the apartment, knowing the man inside had outsmarted them for nearly 3 years. Then, they entered. There was no escape attempt, no confrontation, no shootout. Sitting inside was Kevin Mitnick, 31 years old, the most wanted hacker in America. The chase was finally over. After years of headlines, after countless investigations, after embarrassing some of the biggest technology companies in the world, it ended in an ordinary apartment. But strangely, Kevin's arrest didn't end the story. It made it even bigger. News reports described him as one of the most dangerous hackers alive. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some claimed he could launch nuclear missiles simply by whistling into a telephone. Others believed he could start a war from a payphone. The stories became so outrageous that many people stopped asking whether they were actually true. They weren't. Even so, the government treated Kevin as an extraordinary threat. Bail was denied. He spent years in custody, including long periods in solitary confinement. Prosecutors argued his knowledge alone made him dangerous. To many Americans, that sounded reasonable. But inside the hacking community, a very different story was unfolding. Around the world, programmers, hackers, and civil liberties activists began asking the same question. Had the punishment gone too far? They believed Kevin had become less of a criminal and more of a symbol, a warning, a man being punished not only for what he had done, but for what people imagined he could do. Demonstrations appeared outside court buildings. Websites displayed messages demanding his release, stickers, posters, t-shirts. One slogan appeared everywhere: "Free Kevin." But while the public argued about whether Kevin Mitnick was a criminal, a genius, or something in between, Kevin himself was preparing for a future that almost nobody could have predicted. Because the world's most wanted hacker was about to become one of cybersecurity's most trusted voices. In 1999, after years of legal battles, Kevin Mitnick reached a plea agreement. He pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges, including computer fraud, wire fraud, and illegally intercepting communications. The sentence: 5 years in federal prison. For many people, that should have been the final chapter. The FBI had won. The most wanted hacker in America was behind bars. Case closed, or so it seemed. When Kevin was finally released, freedom came with conditions. For a period of time, he wasn't even allowed to use a computer or a mobile phone without government approval. Imagine that. A man whose entire identity revolved around technology, suddenly forbidden from touching it. For most people, that would have been the end. But Kevin Mitnick wasn't most people. Something remarkable happened. The same companies that once feared him began asking for his help. Businesses realized something important. If Kevin knew how attackers thought, maybe he was the best person to stop them. One by one, corporations hired the former fugitive as a cybersecurity consultant. The hacker the FBI once hunted was now teaching Fortune 500 companies how to defend themselves. Kevin also became a best-selling author. His books, The Art of Deception, The Art of Intrusion, and Ghost in the Wires, helped millions understand a truth the cybersecurity industry had ignored for years. Most people believe hacking is about computers. Kevin Mitnick spent decades proving it wasn't. Firewalls can be upgraded. Passwords can be changed. Software can be patched. But trust is much harder to secure. Every company Kevin infiltrated had sophisticated technology, yet time after time, the weakest link wasn't the machine, it was the person answering the phone. In July 2023, Kevin Mitnick passed away after a battle with pancreatic cancer. He was 59 years old. By then, his reputation had transformed completely, no longer known only as America's most wanted hacker, but as one of the people who forever changed how the world thinks about cybersecurity. The FBI eventually caught Kevin Mitnick. They ended the manhunt. They closed the case. But the lesson he left behind is still unfolding. Every day, millions of phishing emails are sent. Fraudsters impersonate banks, co-workers, tech support, even family members. Not because computers have become weaker, but because human trust has always been the easiest system to exploit. Kevin Mitnick didn't expose the greatest weakness in technology. He exposed the greatest weakness in all of us. And 30 years later, the phone is still ringing.